Hey, so I think we want to be respectful of everyone's time. I hope Ashley can join us. I'm sure, like many of us, it's hard to break away at the end of the day and get started onto the evening's activities. Um, I guess so. I will get started, and I actually have a background in government as well, so I can offer some perspective too, or maybe Ashley would. Ashley and I would have had some uh, similarities. My name is Amanda Wurst. I am the Senior Vice President of Communications, Marketing, and Strategic Initiatives at Eastern Gateway Community College, and with campuses in Steubenville, Youngstown, and online. We are gathered here this evening to talk about or to speak with some very distinguished women in government, and also talk about more about these careers, what it is like in public life, and how people who are interested in engaging in this work can go about doing that and get started and have a fulfilling career. I actually started my career in politics, in campaigns, moved on to working in the office of the Ohio governor, and now in my role as Eastern Gateway at Eastern Gateway, I oversee our government relations and engagement efforts. So obviously still an issue near and dear to my heart. First, I would just like our distinguished panelists tonight to just tell us a little bit more about themselves, kind of what led you to kind of what your position is today, and a brief overview of what got you there. I know we'll get into some of those other deeper questions, dig a little deeper later, but kind of just the steps that led you to where you currently are. I think we'll start with Mimi, if that works.
Hello, everyone. I was trying to get off mute. Can everyone see me? I have my video on, but I don't see that I can be seen.
I can't see you.
Yeah,
You're coming through loud and clear.
Okay, well, let's see.
There you no. Yeah, you have to turn your video on.
I tried turning. Okay, there you go.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mimi Getachew, and I currently own my own consulting company, PFS Consulting. I'm in the process of getting my small business, woman-owned business certifications, and I have about almost 14 years of experience in 1102 contract specialist series. I initially started my career in Department of Defense in the student career entry program as a freshman in college, actually. And it kind of, my background was not originally business or any type of contracting, could have been procurement. I didn't even think they had it at the undergrad level at the time that I got in 2008. But I did get a degree in criminal justice, and I was able to actually procure for the public safety agencies of the District of Columbia. So I was able to kind of mesh those two backgrounds together. But again, going back to my initial start, I did cradle to grave contracting for pretty much 13 years. And I made my way from DOD to civilian agencies like Department of Commerce. I've been in the Coast Guard a couple years, and then I made my way to state and local procurement, which I found to be a little more interesting because I was a little more hands-on on the statement of work writing and development, and the program side of things, which is kind of the social science background that I was able to bring and offer when procuring services for incarcerated inmates, for services for various other public agencies like the police department. I thoroughly enjoy my profession, and everybody kind of tends to say that they fell into contracting, which is kind of sort of my story, but I've developed a passion for it. And I was able to connect with SCORE a few times I actually have a SCORE mentor assigned to me. So, and I have meetings scheduled with my mentor, and SCORE has been a very, very great introduction and resource for my entrepreneurial side of things, because I did a lot of my career was in as a government employee. And so now as a contractor working for myself, it's a little different. And so I like that aspect that I've been doing this for about 3 years now. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you so much. And I'm just going to go to the next person I see in my Hollywood Squares board up here. Alexis.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I actually kind of like Mimi said, my story is I fell into contracting. So my background was in marketing and business development. So I had my first government experience with state government in Pennsylvania, working on like an Ohio, Pennsylvania collaborative to get at-risk youth back into school, get some certifications, and then kind of get them transitioned into manufacturing jobs. And so that's kind of where I got my start and was like, all right, I want to make some social impact. I want to be involved and and still be creative, because there was a big creative aspect of it, getting events together, getting people to come out and sign up. So I kind of took that path. And so from there, I was a project manager and a website designer for a startup marketing company in Youngstown, Ohio. And so I was there for a little bit, and then I went to get my master's, which is how I ended up in DC as a contractor doing data analytics, and I was doing traumatic brain injury research. And that was probably the most fun experience that I had. I was working at Walter Reed Hospital and working with combat veterans. So it was a really eye-opening experience. And so that was for an internship. And so that came to an end, and I had to kind of make a decision as to whether I would go and complete my degree on campus in Chicago or finish my degree online, because they gave me that option if I were to find a job in DC. So I started the job hunt basically to any and everybody that I could send my resume to. And I got a job at Department of Interior, where I've been now for 4 years as a contract specialist. And I am lucky that I fell into a job that I actually love, because you get to use marketing and business strategy and things like that in every day. So I was lucky in that sense, but that's kind of my background.
Great. And last but certainly not least, and I apologize in advance if I say your name wrong, Alina.
You nailed it. Congrats. I got an email addressed to Alien today, so the bar's low. No, but nice to meet you all. I think my story is pretty similar to Alexis and Mimi. I initially started out in state and local government. I'm from New York State, so I was working, helping them modernize their election and voter data websites. I'm more of a technologist, and I think pretty early on, I started seeing that as far as having an impact in public spaces, bringing technology to the private sector and getting to make somebody profit was certainly one way to go, but being able to scale nonprofits or social impact enterprises or government really was a way cooler thing to do with code. So my first job out of college was working on the election databases, and I did a little bit of local political websites and Facebook pages, which makes you feel really tech savvy as the only young person in the room. I did a little bit of cybersecurity work after that for the Iowa caucus. I'm working with some simulations where we would go and work with political parties and say, okay, now what if this happens, or what if aliens invade, or things like that. Make up scenarios, try and see if they had their cybersecurity down pat. And I think started gravitating more towards the design elements. So if you've gotten one of those COVID contact tracing notifications on your phone, I worked on that technology last year. And how do you message that? And how do you tell people where that's coming from or make them trust those sorts of technologies? And everybody got shaken up with COVID. I did as well. I had done the first half of my master's degree and kind of took a break because I got an opportunity helping support some small business outreach software for NASA. So that's what I've been doing for the last year. And my job, even though it is in the government, primarily looks like it would on a tech team anywhere else. I work between interviewing users and working with engineers to help build products that help make government services more effective. And I think kind of the cool part is that any skill that you have, you can usually bring into the public service space in some capacity. I think we think of things like technology or business like they have to exist for for-profit companies, and they certainly can, but you can almost always use those skills and be super impactful in the public service space as well, which I find really fun.
I would say this is very interesting because all of you have talked about small business. And I think that's the exact opposite that people think of when they think of government. Can you kind of, and this is open to any of you, kind of talk a little bit about that, about like sort of what how small business plays an impact day in, day out in the operations and functions of the government, maybe sometimes in ways we wouldn't think about.
I can start kind of from the government side. As a contract specialist, I know we try a lot when we get requirements or different projects coming in. When we make awards, like we really want to consider small businesses to help them, keep them in business and keep them and to help them grow and keep them relevant. Not everything will go to those large businesses. And I know I've heard about small businesses shying away. I recently was in a room where we were discussing small businesses and the impact like in contracting, and they were told that they were advised to shy away from putting out there that they were like a sub-economic group. So like a woman-owned small business or a veteran-owned small business. And it's like, no, we're actually looking to give business to those groups. We're looking to support those groups. And so small businesses, the government is really looking to interact with, as far as what I've experienced on that side. That's just speaking from the government side. So Alina or Mimi, you guys may be able to contribute a different perspective.
And so to just piggyback off of what Alexis was saying, state and local municipalities also have similar laws and regulations that require their procuring agencies to allocate a certain percentage of their dollars to small businesses. And you'll find like I think in DC government, I think it's somewhere like 35% of their agency's budget needs to be spent towards small business communities. And the federal government has similar requirements, and we have to meet them based on categories. And so this is why small business certifications with SBA is very important. Currently, the government only spends about 10% of their budget, I believe it is, and it equates to about $50 billion a year to small businesses. And $50 billion is a lot, but I know the government is constantly looking for ways to improve that. And as SBA is an integral part of procuring procuring entities business unit, we work congruently with them to seek small businesses, in awarding contracts. And as a vendor in that small business community, it's important to be able to know how to market yourself to these federal agencies. And a part of my company does that. I sort of consult with what I call micro businesses, because a lot of times, startups are 1-3-man shop, and marketing yourself becomes extremely important, because we are actively looking for small businesses, from the government side. And then as a contractor marketing myself, I know attending so SCORE has a very good 2-part series webinar for small businesses that I took, that I found to be very, very helpful and resourceful in explaining sort of the process that small businesses go through, or the process of marketing yourself to the federal government. So I encourage people to take a look at that whenever they get a chance.
Sorry, go ahead, Alina.
Yeah, the program that I work with is kind of out of SBA, as Mimi was saying, and it's called the Small Business Innovation and Research SBIR grant program. So that exists through NASA, but SBA is kind of this giant umbrella that helps administer that program through a number of different federal agencies. And I think growing up, especially in a rural area, my idea of a small business was it's a mom and pop shop, you know, kind of like a Rite Aid knockoff or something, or it's a restaurant. And I don't think I really had a concept of what small business looks like when it's innovative and coming from maybe different fields that aren't direct to consumer that you might bump into on Main Street USA. But the program's goals are for a lot of different things. It's not just to get something with fewer than 500 employees, which technically is the definition of a small business. There are diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. They want things that are women-owned. They want things that are veteran-owned. They want businesses that are from something called hub zones, which means they're areas of the country or even within specific cities that don't have as much economic opportunity or activity going through them. These small business programs aren't just kind of handouts for people who might need a leg up helping start their business. I mean, that's, especially in a huge country like the US, a lot of what drives money and smart people and great ideas into rural areas, into economically disadvantaged areas, and helps female founders and those who might not have had the same privileges to start businesses really support a lot of insanely cool initiatives in the federal government. I mean, it's really neat with NASA to be able to talk to a company that is specialized and is in the middle of a plain state. They're in a cornfield, honestly, I think like we think of in Eastern Ohio, and they're making technology that's helping NASA go to the moon. I think there's nothing cooler than realizing that especially a female or minority owned business like that is able to contract with the government. Honestly, I think the main barrier is helping people understand, like Alexis was saying, that the government does want that, and they're actively trying to get it. It's just there's a lot of barriers, there's a lot of access barriers and information barriers, and understanding that dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Can I piggyback off of that real quick? Just the information barrier that Alina was talking about, like that is so true. I hear a lot about people with small businesses and they're like, well, would this apply? Is there anything out there, you know, for someone with a business like mine? And so one woman had a fashion business and she was like, well, how would I apply this to the government? And someone suggested in the room that I was in, they were like, well, the Smithsonian's, like if you're into fashion or redesign or things like that, when they're trying to revamp some of those collectible items, they look for people with experience in that. And I thought that was really interesting. And another person had offered mental health services and they were like, you know, NIH is an option. And so like, I encourage people to not shy away from seeking out opportunities with the government also, because you may think that your industry doesn't apply. There are so many opportunities out there and, you know, ways to build on innovative strategies if we just come together and kind of work with industry to move forward on some better solutions.
And that's, oh, go ahead. No, I love that.
Add one more detail, exactly what Alexis and Alina touched on, the information barrier, that being one of, I guess, you know, a discouraging aspect for people because they, you know, the information is out there. It's just like how to get it or how to access it or how to navigate through it. And the best advice that I have is to look for these professional organizations that kind of specialize it and look at sba.gov. And they have ample resources. I mean, I've looked at it for years and only just recently started to take advantage of SBA. And that's how I was connected through to SCORE. So I mean, there's the information is out there. It's just, you know, it can be discouraging when somebody talks about doing business with the federal government.
Well, and I think it's also not only at like the information gap, but also the perception gap. You know, you work for the government, you work in a state office tower or a Capitol building or a government office, and really this is sort of government work, but out in the wild, out in the world. You know, it's not confined to those spaces that we traditionally associate with government. So that's really interesting perspective. So how do you make those connections with, I mean, I know there's the information gap. I mean, I think we all have known there's the like sort of official and unofficial channels every, you know, that, so what are some of the kind of tricks of the trade you've learned when engaging in contracting with the government? You know, are there any sort of lessons you've learned the hard way that said, oh, if I had known this when I got started, it would have been a whole different ball game?
Industry days are great to attend. However, sometimes they can get a little costly if you're kind of just a startup business. But joining professional organizations, which is also a little costly, you know, sometimes. But the paying the due or annual dues or attending some of those webinars, they're great networking events because you kind of connect with people through those types of virtual and in-person meeting places, I guess.
I could say for me, on one end, I networked through school, and I used my career center at the college I was at, and that's kind of how I got connected into state government. But then in getting into federal government, it was more of still networking, but then kind of like Mimi said, getting involved in professional groups, kind of seeking out like what events were going on that were related to contracting. And then if I was thinking from maybe a contractor's perspective, just to kind of keep an ear in to see, you know, like what procurements are hitting the streets, or, you know, what organizations speak to your specialty, and then what types of things are they looking for, and then keeping up with that, because like the industry days come out to the public. They've opened up opportunities to provide feedback, like via websites on certain ideas that they're thinking about putting into the government, into practice, into the government. So it is kind of, part of it is keeping an ear to the street, but just constantly making sure that you are networking.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of this dynamic doesn't even necessarily have to be exclusive to the contracting aspect of it. People in public service are usually there because they like it. They will always talk to you about their jobs. I have yet to meet somebody who truly considers them a public servant who doesn't want to tell you how cool it is, the thing that they're doing. You don't even have to think it's cool. You just have to ask them, hey, why do you do what you do? Because odds are it's probably not for the money. There are very few like money hungry people doing public service work as a career. Odds are if you find somebody in government and you say, hey, I really want to know more about what your job looks like or how you got there, can we get a 15-minute coffee or something? That can be virtual, especially nowadays. People love doing stuff like that. There's Facebook groups. Women's Foreign Policy Network is fantastic if you enjoy that sort of lens. It's super active. Don't count out social media. A lot of the groups are free. I think we sometimes find it frivolous or go, oh, I would never do that on social media. Who cares? It's how people meet each other nowadays, and it's okay. There's some fantastic professional groups out there. But I have totally reached out to other women on LinkedIn and said, I don't know if I want to be you when I grow up, but I want to find out. Do you have 30 minutes on your calendar? You should always send the calendar invite. And they're almost always willing to at least spill their brain to you and explain how they got where they are, if they like it, and sort of things that they would or wouldn't recommend. People love talking about public service, and they're busy, but they'll give you time.
Well, that is certainly why we are all here tonight, for sure. I feel like there's so many ways, and I think most people assume, and this comes from my own personal experience. I was a political appointee, and everybody assumed, they rightfully knew that was how I got my job. But in government, there are so many ways to get involved. There's people who have literally been working in government their entire career. There were people like me who came in with a public official, and sort of my career was tied to their career. And then there's also, of course, then, leveraging this in more the private sector for public-private partnerships. Can you talk about sort of, you've all talked about your experience getting to that, but, kind of addressing that, the myriad of ways that people get into government, and what someone who is looking to get into public service can sort of expect from those various types of entry points.
So so the way I was introduced into the government was through a student career entry program. So you'll find that a lot of government agencies have pathways programs, even if you're in your master's. At any point of your educational, I think, career endeavors, you're able to enter in those programs if you are a student. Another way that I always recommend people looking to get into the government is to try the contractor world a little bit. Take some of those, not necessarily full-time, because you can go onto usajobs.gov and apply that way, or you can just go on Indeed, and public agencies actually use Indeed and LinkedIn and various other recruitment websites to look for contractors. And then a lot of times they go either contract to term, contract to full time. I've been to several agencies as a contractor, and I've also worked in the federal government and in the state and local government as an FTE. And a lot of times when I come in as a contractor, a year or two of really good work, a couple years of really good work, people are willing to invest in good employees. And so I think, both ways can actually, get you to where you want, target an agency on a recruitment website and, apply to jobs that way, leveraging networks or building your networks and just putting yourself out there.
I'd second that. The Pathway program is a really, really good program for students to try to get involved in the government. Getting internships, some agencies offer student internships for a year. There's student trainee programs. I was a contractor before I went to the government side, and that is definitely a great way to get in and get experience working in a government setting while still being in private sector. So those are all great entry points. And then one thing at the state government level that I did do was I sent an email. It's kind of like, I guess, cold emailing, if that's what you want to call that. And I was like, hey, can I get an interview with you, or mentorships? Like, requesting mentorships will always be a benefit. They're always looking to teach young people, young women, especially, and or people transitioning careers. There's always an opportunity to reach out to someone and say, hey, I want to learn more about your position, kind of like Alina was saying. I want to learn what you want to do. What you do, to see if it's what I want to do moving forward, and just building those connections and those networks. And also doing some research, because really applying to the government is not an intuitive process, I would say. Like, there's so many nuances, knowing grades, series, what you qualify for, where you qualify to apply. So familiarizing yourself with those as well can kind of help you get a leg up and a better, more well-rounded understanding of where you want to be.
I think one thing I definitely didn't understand was that being a contractor can look like a lot of different things. There are contractor positions where you have the agency badge, have the email, the .gov, you walk into it, the only difference is that your badge is green and you function exactly like a full-time employee of that agency. There are other dynamics where you might support 3 different agencies throughout the course of a day. And your company says, okay, we do media or we do tech or this is our specialty. And we take these requests, we bill hours to different agencies for different contracts. And you might be at your private company's site and you feel more like an employee of that company. There's a lot of different things it can look like. Some of them just being completely indistinguishable from being a normal, often lower level employee in a larger agency. And I think one thing to note is that especially when you're right out of school, right out of undergrad, the way that the pay scale works in the government often means that it can help to do some sort of contracting work early on, because the cards are stacked against you somewhat because it takes into account your years of experience, your age, et cetera, your previous salary, that being at a private company might not have that same dynamic. And I think especially as young people, honestly, let's be honest, as women, there's this idea that you're supposed to sacrifice pay to do work that helps people. Contracting is a very good way to say, like, gonna make money, gonna help people too. Do not ever feel bad for prioritizing something like that, especially at the beginning of your career, especially as a female. And that is something that you really shouldn't ignore or feel bad about, because you can be doing the exact same public service work and just supporting yourself a little bit better early in your career.
I'm going to say one thing, and then I want to pick up right where that thread led. And I guess I'm kind of, so Ashley Davis, who was our 4th panelist this evening, also had a background. She was a political appointee in the Bush-Cheney administration, working in the White House. So I think, mine was a much lower level than hers, from security clearances on out. But having been a political appointee in a state house as well, I'm shocked at how remarkable really the journey is, regardless if it is. It's about networking. It's about finding those opportunities through internships or, just, Alina, as you said, running the Facebook on a campaign, it really is fundamentally the same thing of getting those or internships, that experience when in school or just starting out your career and saying yes to opportunities, and then networking. I mean, I think that's one thing I think it is really helpful for people to take away, because I do feel like political appointees are seen as just the rich and powerful people helping other rich and powerful people. And really, my experience at least was I worked a lot of internships and worked really hard and met the right people and got a break. So I think it's really good to see that there's those absolute similarities. But Alina, going back to what you were saying about women in government and politics, I mean, we certainly have a female Speaker of the House, and a female Vice President of the United States. But when you look across the government spectrum, women are still underrepresented in government at every level across the board. So, what experiences could you all share with young women who are looking at these statistics and going, why would I want to get involved in public life? I'm already, I'm kind of starting out in an industry that, or a type of work that traditionally kind of hasn't wanted people like me or valued people like me in a way that we're not in these greater leadership positions already.
One of the things that I guess I could say, being a minority in the government or in any field, I think that a lot of times you're going to be in roles or positions where you're uncomfortable, or maybe there's this thing called imposter syndrome that a lot of times people will have, especially. So I do IT procurements, and a lot of times you work with engineers, you work with software developers, and it's male dominated fields. And so I think early in my career, I think 1 through 7, which is crazy, years 1 through 7, I felt probably the least confident. But I think just developing sort of the skill sets, like, the things that you are sort of, you feel you can improve on, to sort of get comfortable and familiar with that environment. And also a lot of times you're just you kind of tend to have to pave the way, or you might find yourself being, the only woman in the room. I found myself in meetings several times where I'm the only woman, kind of running the show. And it's just, you'll get to a point where you'll be more comfortable, where you won't even notice it anymore, and I think that, and I think a lot of it has to be, one, reaching out to, I know this is kind of like the theme of everything, but reaching out to other women who you feel you can identify with or relate to, and kind of helping you even talk about some of the dynamics of, being a woman in the workplace. A lot of times, I know I worked in DoD, and so now they have all these sexual harassment training courses and things like that. But I was 19 in a military institution, and it was difficult, to say the least. And so I like the progress that we've made, in the world, in the corporate world, because we are really, setting this world on fire, and we're letting it be known that as a female vice president, she's not going to be the last, she is the first. But we're here, and I think that reaching out to your fellow women in your industries, or even if in other industries, if you can't find any in your current department, division. I happen to be very blessed to have a team lead, a division chief, all up, and down the chain. I have women in my field. So I'm very happy about that. Contracting, I think you'll find the 1102 sort of series, it's the job series of the federal government for contract specialists, that it is pretty populated with women. So that's one of the upsides, I think, to working in the corporate setting in this industry.
I can speak to an experience that I had, and this was when I was working for as a contractor with DoD, and I was not in the 1102 series yet, but this is when I was doing the data administration, and I had a male counterpart who we did the exact same job. My job description was a little different. He was a government employee, and I was, again, a contractor, but I was working also with some of the researchers and to develop certain things. So anyway, there was a high-ranking military personnel. I forget what exactly his job was in the hospital, but he came down and he asked a question, and I answered his question, explained it, and he was like, well, I'd rather hear what he has to say about it. And I was like, that was my first time experiencing something like that, so blunt and in my face, and I didn't really know what to do. And at the time, my program manager was, she was a woman, so I was like, look, I need to talk to you. This is what happened. And she basically gave me some really good advice, and this was during my internship, and she was like, it doesn't matter who they are, you don't let them disrespect you just because you are a woman. And that's blatantly what that was. And she was like, say what you need to say, but say it respectfully. And I kind of made it my mission to make sure that my presence was known wherever I am, in whatever industry I'm working in. And falling into contracting, yes, there is a lot of diversity, a lot of women in contracting, but when you work with the program office, sometimes they can even come back to you and speak to you like, I'm in IT contracting, and they just assume, oh, well, you wouldn't know. You don't know. This is IT. This is a different realm. Yes, but I have to have some experience in order to be qualified to make this acquisition for you. So I'm gonna need you to go ahead and put some respect on my name, respectfully, so I can do this job for you, because I know what I'm capable of. And it's kind of about knowing what you are capable of and having faith in yourself, and trusting yourself that you are smart enough, you can accomplish this, you can, complete these tasks just as well as anyone else. And so it's kind of about standing your ground in that sense. And it's a process, at least it was for me, to get that mental state. But once you have it, you stick with it and don't shy away from whatever type of job in the government you want to do, whether you want to be an engineer, contract specialist, data scientist, whatever it is. Whether if it's male dominated, that doesn't mean it's not meant for you to infiltrate. So.
Yeah, and especially as far as the male dominated tech realm, there's quite a few guys. It is rare that I have women on my team. That has been pretty much a constant across the board. There are women that I now work with, but I wouldn't say in most of my meetings that there are other women. And that's okay. In some regards, as far as like my daily survival, that doesn't, I think one thing to definitely think about as you're interning places, as you're interviewing places, is kind of feel out what the dynamics are. I have a male hire boss who has my back every single time and will go to bat. There have been one or two issues either with people at work or just dynamics, and he'll even call it out and go, "You good? Do you need me to say something? I will, but he's like, I want you to try and have the power first, and I'll back you up if they don't listen to you," kind of deal. He's an absolutely fantastic manager and isn't afraid to call it when he sees it. That is something that you should be looking for with everything else that comes along with a job. What is the management like? How do they treat not just women themselves, not just are they personally nice, but are they willing to actually go to bat for you? And I've been really fortunate with that in a number of positions I've had. I've also had other positions where men in tech are men in tech. I was at one point trying to deliver a point on a way that we should drive a project, and an older male member of the team said, "Sit down, young lady." And I just was almost ready to laugh and just go, "Retire, old man." I didn't, but I was so freaking close because, and it catches you off guard. I think that there's a certain level of just being a woman where you got to go, "That was weird, dodge that one." But the other thing I would say is that, and I hear this in tech a lot, you hear this in finance a lot, is women being told to act like men in different ways to get ahead. And I disagree with that till the day I die. I do not think that being successful has to look like being a man. I've seen this on TikTok a lot. "Oh, I remove exclamation points or smiley faces or hearts from my emails." Maybe not hearts, hearts are a little weird, but I remove things from my emails so that I don't sound more female. And I don't know when we decided that compassion was some female trait that we should be embarrassed of, or that being a female in general. Do you love getting emails from men all the time? No, not necessarily. Just because men happen to be the current leaders doesn't mean that we have to accept everything they do with zero critique. And I think that it's common for women who are scared of being in male-dominated areas to go, "I'll just act like a dude. It'll all be okay. I can join the boys club if I become one and just leave my female personality at the door." Well, I mean, you're going to have imposter syndrome anyway. That's not going to help. That's going to make you feel like you're putting on this mask when you go to work. It's going to make you feel like you have to leave yourself at home when you go to work. No one wants to live like that. No one wants to be that person in the office. And let's be real, especially in public service areas, we could use a little compassion. We could use a little feminine energy. I mean, there is nothing wrong with that. And study after study says that women crush every metric on leadership. I would say to Amanda's earlier point about men rising through the ranks of government, there's a difference between public service and power. I think women and men sometimes are drawn to opposite ends of that spectrum. And while it's okay to want both, and we absolutely should want both as women, that doesn't mean that power can't mean public service. And that doesn't mean that we can't bring all the good stuff that we have to offer with us, because I think that this increasing push for progressivism that just looks more like men is misled. And I think especially in an industry that is built to help people, anything that chips away at compassion or bringing your authentic self to work is not something we should necessarily encourage or adopt.
I'm sorry, I'm serving as moderator and fourth panelist, I feel like tonight.
Please do, welcome.
And so, I mean, because one of the interesting, you all have talked about sort of internal examples of this. When I was in the governor's office, I was his spokesperson. So I got the external pushback on that. As a spokesperson, obviously, my name, image, everything. I was on TV a lot. I was in the newspaper a lot. And I would get emails from people that were graphic and explicit and just disgusting and gross. There was one blogger who apparently he was part political blogger, part flat fashion blogger. Every time I was on TV, he made fun of what I wore, how my hair looked, everything. And my predecessor and my then boss was a huge champion of women, a huge champion of me, and an all around just really great human. And I never told him any of this. And finally one day I was just like, God, how did you put up with this? And he went, I didn't. He said, nobody ever wrote me emails about, how I really got my job. He said, I never dealt with any of this. He said, and I'm sorry, and he was like, I can't imagine. He was like, please tell me. But so it was interesting, like being in public life, so many people, especially as we watched the Me Too movement, had these horrible stories of people abusing power. And I was just like, I don't even know how to describe mine. It was, anonymous people, but it was a lot to take. And that I think is so unique to public life as well, that we have this sort of day-to-day pressure that anyone in a high functioning organization would, but then you have the added dynamic of public pressure, whether it's to use public funds, public records, just that your work is out there and you're sort of on display to the public. That's what for one of my things made it really unique, and something that you could never have in a different type of experience. So I want to ask one question too of this group. Earlier this year, we saw a very powerful image. My Democrat friends and Republican friends all agreed, just seeing on this, when the State of the Union was delivered by President Biden, having two women behind the President of the United States on the dais was a powerful image. Do you feel like that has created some momentum for change? Or was it sort of just something where sort of the women of America were high-fiving each other, but it didn't really get into government and culture in a meaningful way?
I think that we are moving in the right direction. I think that if anything, it is a closer depiction. I'm sorry, I'm experiencing a lag. Can everyone hear me?
We can hear you, but you are video-wise breaking up a little bit.
Okay, I might need to just stop the video because it just keeps lagging. But I'm trying not to call it symbolism, but it kind of is. But in reality, I did see this field changing, even in IT procurement for the last 13 years. I've seen more engineers, more data analysts, more software developers. It's still not as much as we'd want to see, but there is a step in the right direction. To have it be behind the symbolism behind it being the highest levels of office or government, I don't think we're there yet. To that extent, I think there is a little, I'm not going to say exaggeration, but I'm going to say that we still have a lot of work to do. we still have a lot of work to do in our fight for equality, and in corporate America, and in these various industries that just that have this resistance to us. The military culture, when I left, I mean, I left after 4 years because of it. It was really bad, in my opinion, very toxic. Maybe I was just a little young too, because I was in there from like 19 to 22. And so it was a little much for me, but back then, so I'm hoping that it's changed, but I'm not sure if it's changed much. So I hope that didn't sound too, pessimistic.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I would
Alexis,
say,
go ahead.
yeah. No, I was just saying, I think women are taking a step in the right direction and making their voices heard and going to seize more opportunity. Do I think we have a long way to go? Yes. But do I think we can get there? Also, yes. Just thinking back to even the Women's March that occurred, women were finally willing to, I don't know if I want to say take their voices back or make their voices heard, but they're finally getting into a place where they are fighting for what is right for them, and standing up and taking positions that they deserve. And hopefully it does make it to those higher ranking positions within the government. And being a woman is not seen as a fault for not giving them positions of power in public service. And so the fact that women are no longer, or become less likely to shy away from those positions, I think shows that we are moving in the right direction. But again, we still have a ways to go.
I'd agree with that. I'd also say that, at least from my perspective, seeing the vice president and whatnot, it was cool, but I think I saw it more as a consequence of progress and not this, oh, she's leading the charge, thank goodness someone did. It's more, we've come a fair way, not that she's a trailblazer for the rest of us, which I think is a helpful sort of mile marker for, okay, things are working. This is directionally correct. That happened, woo. But it wasn't, I think when we talk about especially the imagery of breaking the glass ceiling, it doesn't work that one woman makes it through and the rest of us can rush through, because that was the only thing keeping all of us back. I think that sometimes when one woman succeeds, we go, okay, we're done. Everybody go home. And I think there was definitely a little bit of that rhetoric after the election of, okay, what more do you want? You made it up to the top. And it's like, well, it's not about the top of the pyramid, it's about the rest of it. And I think kind of omnipresent throughout government, as Mimi was saying with the DoD, there are spaces that, great, there's a lot of women in some agencies, especially in the civilian sector, less so when you get into the Department of Defense and a lot of those agencies. And I absolutely applaud the women making strides there. I haven't served or anything, but if there's a large part of the reason that I stuck with civilian tech and didn't continue with cybersecurity or defense tech was I could not stomach the idea of being in the bro culture. And it's two-sided. Part of it is the veteran thing, because there are things that I just will never know having not served. But I think that's compounded when you realize that, oh, it's also very, very primarily male. And I've been in spaces, especially in cybersecurity, where people with no cybersecurity knowledge are listened to because they have this sort of military aesthetic, whether or not they even are. They're usually just males with like short haircuts. And they can speak on something and sound like an authority. And I'd go, hey, I actually wrote the book on this. And people go, yeah, the men are talking. Thank you very much. In more words or fewer. But so I think, yes, it's amazing that we have, I don't want to call it a symbolic win. It is far more than a symbolic win. But it's at the end of the day, one woman, and we have a lot more to go.
think kind of keeping along with sort of generalizing it beyond gender, but there's so many stereotypes people have about people who work in government, whether it's, the shameless political hack or the unfeeling bureaucrat, or when I was in the governor's office, everybody thought I like worked in a like West Wing environment, like where we walked and talked and everybody was witty and charming, and it was very fabulous. And I'm like, no, actually we're really tired, we drink a lot of coffee, none of us are that funny, and we barely ever get away from our desks. We have nowhere to walk and talk to because we don't walk. So I guess, kind of what are some of the stereotypes that you get the most frustrated with when people go, oh, you work in government tech, gov tech, it must be like this. And it's like, that's nothing what it's like.
I think people definitely overlook the number of roles that support one thing an agency does. Working at the DoD does not usually mean you're someone who's deployed and holding a gun in a war zone. It could mean you look at spreadsheets. And working at NASA, they haven't sent me to the moon yet, and I keep asking. And
that's wrong. That's wrong.
I don't know if my emails are getting through, so I'll have to like troubleshoot. But I think people overlook how much goes into the mission support of an agency. Also, I mean, you mentioned this as a political appointee. My first role as an IT geek was technically a political appointment. In local government, that they still have those positions. They're just not that cool. You're just a geek squad, which I loved being, and I still love being. But I think I would meet people and they would go, oh, you're getting rich off my tax dollars. And I'm thinking, honey, I don't want to tell you how much I make because I'm embarrassed, but I promise no one, I'm not getting rich off your tax dollars at least. And I think that some of the entitlement as far as the dynamic between constituency and government is absolutely a part of our democracy and part of how government works. At the same time, and the flip side of the coin, there are like government versions of Karens who are just kind of saying, I get to speak to the manager because I pay my taxes. And you're kind of going, yeah, you and everyone else. And I think as a public servant, making sure that you're keeping in your mind, this is one person we serve. It might be the loudest one today, but it is one person. And the squeaky wheel should not get all of taxpayers' grease. And I think that's a very unique thing to navigate because it's different from when I was a Starbucks barista and someone would say, I'm going to call corporate. And you're like, cool, weird, okay. Versus these people vote. And that's their version of calling corporate. And they should vote and you want them to vote. And that's what a healthy democracy is. But I think kind of understanding that you do have an obligation to people, whether or not they bought a latte, is a different way of thinking about your work and the responsibility that you have to the public. And I journal about it regularly. Like, I don't really know what the answer is. And it's something that is probably you're going to think about it more than you would if you have ever worked at Starbucks, which I didn't think about it that much. I was like, call corporate, have a great time. But I think that stereotype of you work for me, we do, and we work for everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
I think the stereotypes that I get the most, there are two. When people ask me where I work and I say Department of Interior, the first question I always get is like, oh, so you do interior design? And I'm like, well, for where? Where would you? I mean, there are some things in the, in the White House that we handle.
I love what you did with the East Wing.
Like, thank you. That was all me. No, I'm like, no, not quite. Then I'll explain like I'm in IT acquisitions. But then on the flip side of that, the other one is everyone thinks I know all the answers to every conspiracy theory ever made. And so they're like, so what is the president planning to do next Thursday at 4 p.m.? And I'm like, if you knew how far removed I was actually from the president, you would understand why I cannot or have not ever even thought about that. So like trying to explain to people on the two extremes that there are actually other positions that do other important jobs or necessary jobs, or what you may consider day-to-day jobs, because believe it, those positions exist in the federal government as well. You know, like explaining that to them, they're like, oh, I didn't even realize. I was like, yeah, you know, you pay taxpayer dollars and I'm responsible for spending those dollars, you know, getting the best value. So that's how we can kind of work together. I haven't gotten the, you know, you work for me, but I'm also not in that, like in an industry, well, I don't think I am anyway, I just haven't experienced it yet, in an industry where someone would approach me like that. But those are the two stereotypes that I get the most.
And you, before we move on, you have to answer. Is there a treasure map on the back of the Declaration of Independence? I saw it on TV once. You can tell us.
I can't tell any secrets, I'm sorry.
All right. All right, Mimi, I'll turn it over to you.
I think I have two as well. One from the government perspective, FTE. A lot of people, I think from the outside in, and even sometimes on the inside when you're dealing with program office, being an 1102 or contract specialist, I feel like we get the stereotype that government employees don't care, or we're just kind of pushing papers through. And in reality, we're not, especially, okay. There is a new sort of approach to government right now, and I think it's taking more of an open door policy. So people are starting to realize that there's passion behind public service, even at the, you know, the lowest level like ours, you know, as a contract specialist. But I think that's one stereotype that's, I hope is starting to sort of dissolve, that we're just paper pushing or that we don't care. In reality, I care. I truly care about every project that I've ever worked on. And I truly try my best. And there are other people who understand the mission and understand the critical nature, especially in IT and cybersecurity and cyber defense and in what we do, you know, from all aspects of public service. And then I think the other side of things is, as a contractor, I feel as though a lot of people have the stereotype that we make that we're like millionaires. All of us are millionaires, and all of us are just overpaid and like kind of, and in reality, especially those of us who kind of start off as, you know, subcontractors of our own business, it's kind of sad sometimes, especially when you're, you know, comparatively to how much you feel, you know, you're worth or whatever, how much you feel you do sometimes. And so I do feel like that stereotype kind of follows contractors a little bit, no matter, and there are a lot of, you know, companies that make a lot of money, you know, but not everybody's a Booz Allen or Northrop Grumman. There's a lot of boutique companies that tend to subcontract their work out. I'm on a subcontract, and which means I'm like literally, you know, the second person removed away from the actual, you know, the dollars to it. So I think there's like that type of stereotype that kind of follows contractors in this world, that we're all like just, you know, fat pocketed, like, you know, bureaucrats, I guess.
I had the benefit of my salary being published in the largest newspaper in the state the week I started working for the governor. So everybody knew I was not getting rich. It was kind of nice. I just took that right off the table.
Right.
You all mentioned in some way, shape, or form mission. And I obviously, I think that's why everybody gets into public service, is they have a true calling to help or to be part of something bigger than themselves, be part of solutions, be part of a mission. You know, what is, I guess, in that respect, what is the most rewarding part of working in government?
So for me, that's one of the reasons why I stated that I liked state and local, because I was able to sort of see all of the contracts that I've put in place. And so, for example, we got free Wi-Fi for the city, and that was a huge, you know, OCIO endeavor and people truly love that. So if you stand next to a government building within like 100 feet at the time, you can get Wi-Fi access, and that really did help people, with, the things that they needed to get done in their everyday lives. I did some procurements for the DC government's Obamacare website. And so, you when you get to see the work that you do, you tend to take pride in that a lot more, and have a lot of I guess drive to kind of want to do more and push more. And so I have this, idea in my head that every couple of years I did want to move from agency to agency to sort of study what they do. Because, for example, working at Department of Commerce, I did not ever think that I'd be putting together a contract to go help Afghanistan with their constitution, like sending lawyers, and this is during peacetime, and contracting during peacetime and during wartime are two different things. And so I was able to really, like, even at the federal government level, sort of being connected to the mission and being connected to what your tax dollars are kind of paying for. You feel some sort of pride in the fact that, you're kind of, at least I do, moving with the mission and doing something that you were, like, elected or put in a position to be able to do.
Maya, do you have your hand raised?
Oh, thank you.
Yes, I do.
You're panelist and moderator now too.
I'm sorry. It was a lot of, I wanted to save my questions to the end because I have a lot to say for all three of you guys, but I
just wanted to make sure that we didn't.
Yeah. No, my hand was raised because I have well, can I ask my question now? Am I allowed to ask questions now? Or can I wait till the end?
Go for it.
Okay. Well, I work on a contractor basis now. Wait a minute. I have a GSA badge with GSA, and the contracting is Chimes. It's a company contracting, and I have a lot of certificates, like from GSA, background investigations, all that, because I like to do. Well, let me just show you guys the chat. I'm better at showing than telling. So how do you switch this thing? So I have all my GSA information, my contracting, other contracting, like all my certificates, and it's about 200 and I have about 250 certificates from Source of America, and from GSA I have 19 certificates, because I'm the company's point of contact, and my GSA point of contact is Miss Sylvia. And actually, Miss Alexis, you're not far from me, because you say you work in the White House. I'm near the White House. I can literally walk there if I wanted to, but
no, I'm not at the White House. I'm at Department of Interior. People just assume that I do interior for the White House, but no, I'm at Department of the Interior.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, they're not smart. But I know exactly where you are, and I think you all are very brave, because it's like people, because I deal with the same thing too, like male counterparts, and sometimes women, they saying that, oh, just because I'm young, like I don't know this and that, and I cussed out every one of them. I'm sorry, because I'm just have a person where I'm not gonna let anybody that's making that's high, like in the government, that's higher than me. I'm not gonna let them talk down on me, and that's happened to me before. And can I ask you all a question? Have any of you guys ever told them just to kiss your A or something? Like, you can't cuss to them, can you? Because it just sounds like it's just jealousy. You can't tell them that.
I don't recommend that.
Oh, well, I do. I'm sorry, but I cussed out a lot of contractors. I've cussed out a lot of people because they feel like just because I'm young that they can talk down on me. But I don't let them do that, because I'm just a person where all my certificates I've shown you, and I'm in school now with EGCC, Miss Amanda. Like, I'm in school now because I'm learning. I'm always doing everything. I'm doing a lot. Like, my supervisor even told me, I have to ask for her permission of stuff like that. And what else did she say? It's something similar to what you said, Miss Alexis, and you, Miss Elena. It's just my supervisor told me that, remember who your boss is. I said, what is it, slavery? This isn't slavery. Like, you don't own me. I don't belong to you. I do what I want to do. Like, yes, you're my supervisor, but she said, well, I'm in charge of you. I said, nobody's in charge of me. I'm a grown woman. And I'm just type of person where my only, like, if I don't have my mom's approval, I don't care what the world says. I've learned, and people always telling me that I can't do this and can't do that. I show them differently. I can do just as much as a GSA contractor can do, a specialist can do, an IT specialist. I don't care what position it is. I treat people like the way I want to be treated. And I don't look at them as above me or below me, because just because you're making more money than me and your title is bigger, that doesn't mean you can talk to me any way you want to. I'm sorry, but I just cussed all them out. I'm sorry. I can't just sit there and just let somebody disrespect me. I'm not going to do. I'm sorry. I can't do that. And
One
I
of the
come
ways
from
you could
family.
you could combat that, Maya. One of the ways that I would recommend or combating that is a lot of times, for whatever reason, we feel once we commit to an agency, or once we invest a lot of time and energy into an agency, we kind of marry ourselves to that agency and or that environment. And I tell people, usually I give myself 2.5 to 3 years to kind of feel an agency out. And so I will tell you, I was at a specific agency that I think the turnover rate was like, I think when I started, 13 people were there. And a lot of it had to do with management and the culture of that agency and that department. And like Alina was saying, one of the things that, especially as a woman, you want to look for is the culture of the agency and how they treat women and how they treat their minorities and how they treat their people in general. And if it's not conducive of a productive, positive work environment where you're staying with high vibrations, take the jump and go look at other places, or go look at other departments, other divisions, within GSA. GSA is a great agency, so I can understand why somebody would, want to stay there for a long time with all their benefits and stuff. But if you feel that conflict, with your supervisor, I would recommend sort of either reaching out to other people in other divisions, other women that could possibly mentor you to help you, professionally navigate through the friction, or just,
well,
find other. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, but for me, it's like, she's ignorant. So people that are ignorant, I don't even waste my time even worried about them, because I have a lot of connection with GSA. Matter of fact, I had 2 interviews with GSA, and one interview with Department of District Government Department of Employment Services. So I'm navigating on my own. I'm doing networking on my own. I have a LinkedIn page of my own. I think I already have you as a friend on LinkedIn, Miss Alexis. I already found you. But one thing I know is that I never stop learning. And just because somebody's ignorant, I let them stay ignorant. I don't care what they say. And with GSA, I have a lot of connections with GSA. My point of contact, Miss Sylvia, I get along with her great. And everybody in GSA, I get along with great. My supervisor, she's just ignorant, and I don't waste my time with her. Chimes, I work for a janitorial service company called Chimes People with Disabilities, and I have an intellectual disability. Now, if I can do all this, I'm not gonna let nobody tell me what I can and can't do, because my supervisor's always telling me, what's this and what's that. I said, none of your business, because if you want to learn, you learn your own. She's the type of person where she wants everybody to do her work for her. It's not me. And I tell her straight off the back, I'm not doing your work for you, because if you want to learn, you will work your way up the ladder and learn, but I'm not doing it for you. And then I tell them straight up, like, no, I'm not afraid of speaking my mind, because growing up, I was always shy and bullied, but I had to get out of that, because in my adult life, I'm not going to let anybody tell me what I can and can't do, because I speak back to my supervisor all the time, and I speak back to both of them, because one of my supervisors today told me that I can't do this and that. I said, well, you can't tell me what I can and can't do. You're not older. You just my supervisor. You don't know what my abilities are. Instead of saying that you don't know, why don't you just ask a person? And it's always the male counterpart. But like I said, it's refreshing to tell them my mind. It is very refreshing, because I don't care what they say, because I cuss them out.
Well, let me jump in, because I know, Alina, you sort of,
Sorry.
No, that's okay. We do have a couple other questions I want to make sure we get to. But Alina, you had really mentioned about like having that emotional, like that first reaction when they said, like, sit down, young lady. And, that emotional reaction, that initial reaction, I think any of us would have to stand up for ourselves, like Maya said, and say, retire, boomer, or, how do you manage? I mean, that's, manage that? And then we also have, after you answer that, I'm going to jump over to 2 other questions that we have in the chat, if that's okay, Maya.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, I did hold my tongue. And I think when I've totally had a chip on my shoulder at points, I've totally wanted, obviously, to cuss somebody out. I think one thing to think about is when you want to say something like that to someone, it's kind of like, who's it for? It feels really, really good for you in the short term. In the long term, I think everybody's got a reputation, whether it's with that specific person or somebody else hearing you talk like that. And maybe she has no power over you. Maybe she's not going to be the one who hires you in the future, but they'll call it a corridor reputation. So somebody else who like sees that, even if they don't know what she did to you or what led up to that interaction, I think sometimes it can reflect negatively on you, even if it's not your fault, or even if you were totally justified in saying what you said. I mean, at one point, and this was not necessarily in government, I got called trailer trash growing up. And I was just like, you know, maybe I am. And maybe that's something to you. I don't really care. Like, I could have cussed somebody out. I have totally cussed somebody out for calling me that before. And I think for a while, especially when I was early in my career, because I'm young too, I'm 24. I think my first reaction was to like spit out my resume at somebody and go, screw you, I've done this, 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 and this, and I've done this, and I've gone to this school, or I've worked on this thing, and I'm not trailer trash. And it's like, you know, who's that for? Is that for me? Is that for my ego? I'm confident enough in myself at this point. If that person views me a certain way, that's up to them. But I'm not going to damage my own reputation getting into a fight with somebody who isn't worth it, and who honestly is only going to take me down with them. And I think especially in government, the people in there, it's a revolving door. You're going to run into a lot of the same people, a lot of the same times. Being able to handle that with grace and take a hit, and the other person looks worse if they're constantly punching down on you and you're turning the other cheek and going, that wasn't super nice. And also, I'm going to be professional about this, and I'm going to keep my cool, and I'm going to keep my head level, and I'm just going to go about my day, and I'm going to do my job the way I'm supposed to do my job. I think it feels really good to hit back when somebody hits you. But it doesn't feel good for long, and it doesn't make you look good for long. And I think at the end of the day, sometimes supervisors are just supervisors, and sometimes they make mistakes and we have to listen to them as they're making a mistake. And it stinks, but it's kind of just also work. And that's not government, that's not female, that's just work.
I have never heard corridor reputation, and I'm going to use it all the time. I will attribute it to you, but I love that. I love that concept.
It's a State Department thing. Another great thing to look into, I was briefly on a State Department fellowship. Pickering and Wrangell are 2 fellowships that will help pay for your master's degrees in exchange for service as a U.S. diplomat, and they're aimed at women, minorities, and low-income students. So highly recommend looking into those if they are applicable. And that's where you get corridor reputation, is the State Department.
So we also have a question from Amelia Taggart. Amelia, if you want to take the floor.
So, you know, I really have never given to any political campaign, but I guess I've never been starstruck by anyone. I mean, maybe by New Kids on the Block when I was like 10 or 11, but is there anybody in government that you see as like you've ever been starstruck with? You know, I actually just ran into a football coach here in Ohio who was a president of a university, and people get very starstruck at him. And I just look at him as like, oh, he's a football coach. But is there anybody in government that you guys feel like, you know, you walk into a room and you're kind of stuttering for words and you have those stars in your eyes?
That's a good question. For me, it's agencies specific. So my deputy assistant secretary, her name is Jackie Jones, and she is just amazing. She's on her stuff, but she's just not afraid to be herself. Like she will have Zoom calls. And she's, I think, from the president, maybe 2 or 3 levels down, and then 2 levels down from the Secretary of Interior. But we'll get on our team's calls, and she always has music playing, whatever song it is. Like she's so personable, so down to earth. But you know, some of those like executive positions, those SES positions, you don't expect them to be so relatable and just so, I don't know, down to earth, for lack of better term. So she is someone that I'm just like, oh my God, like you're amazing.
I know they say like never meet your heroes, which I think is super, super true for politicians. They're human, and I think same in the political arena. Anybody that I've ever been obsessed with, I learn one thing about them and go, oh, you did what? Or you said what to who? So I think I've been starstruck by individual people that I work with and gone, oh my gosh, you are an angel. I think as far as like presidential campaigns I'd hop on, probably like, I'm not saying I wouldn't hop on any of them, but I'm not starstruck by absolutely anybody. There's people I think I'm happy they're engaging in the way that they are, but nobody's perfect. And personally, I think especially if you're on a campaign, the worst thing you can do is put somebody on a pedestal and just go, I'm going to devote my life to this person, and pretending that nothing they've ever done is wrong. I think that got us into a lot of the political position we're in today. And I think especially as you're in politics, realizing you're working for a human is a very helpful thing. But also, it's hard to devote your life to a campaign if you don't like the person that much. So there's a sweet spot.
Yeah, at least got to be some mission alignment. Absolutely.
So I have local politics. I guess some of the congressmen and congresswomen that I tend to like. Again, I want to subscribe to Alina's sort of idea of not really putting people on a pedestal. So that's why when I say Ayanna Presley's name or Ilhan Muhammad, I know that they're human beings. I know that they're politicians, and I know that not everything that they vote for or policies that they push for, I may or may not agree with. But in my local politics, though, in DC, I would like an opportunity to possibly work for Trayon White, and he is a Ward 8 council member, and I truly like how personable he is and how very in touch with his community that he is, and how active he is in, responding to people's messages. I mean, he manages everything pretty much on his own or on a tight network. And so I think local politics also is sort of kind of really important. I don't necessarily want to say it's more important, but it's just as, if not, more important, because it's in your actual community, the change that you can be the change that you want to see. And so I like getting involved in my local politics. In DC, it can be very, very, very political. So you really do have to do your research and make sure that you know that the people you support, because the policies that they push are going to directly affect you and in your community. And so I would just encourage people to not put people on a pedestal, like Alina said, but align yourself and be active in putting an eye and an ear to your local politics, I guess.
So, Anna Marie asked, has in the chat, well, kind of to piggyback off of this, she said, more so than being starstruck, what is someone you have met in government that you would want to emulate, who's been your role model in government? And I know, Alexis, you kind of, kind of answered this question already with, having, someone who's more of a direct colleague. So,
Right.
or Elena, I don't know, or Alina, sorry, I don't know if either of you want to take on the sort of more role model aside from the superstar aspect.
So was the question like, because again, it would be more specific to my experience and nothing like relatable to, I guess, everybody else possibly, but I do in the agency that I currently service or work for. I do love my division chief. Her name is Shalita St. Louis. And I mean, I love her open door policies. I love how she pretty much I love her delivery, and even when she delivers, not so good news. There's just certain things about how she carries herself that I truly like look at, and I haven't heard anybody say anything bad about her. And so, you kind of want to emulate, I guess it's like just looking up, I guess, to her in some ways.
I love
Yeah.
I've worked with a number of different technologists who are very like eyes on the prize, can totally keep themselves leveled when everybody else is talking about, do we have the budget for it? Do we have the timeline for it? They go, no, but like, what are we actually trying to do? Is this actually what we want to get done? Is this a change we want to make? And I think especially being younger, being newer to the field, there's totally times where I go, well, what does this person want? Or this person, or they said they didn't like that. And there's two in particular who've really helped me just kind of keep a level head and go, okay, is that the direction we want to move in? One has these little stickers he gives out. There's a lot of people in tech will say, move fast and break things, which has become like this rallying cry for just kind of reckless innovation. And maybe that works in the private sphere, but in the public sector, you're playing with people's tax dollars for one, and also their government services. I mean, they are democratically entitled to this functioning as well as it can. So he gives out these little stickers that say, move carefully and fix things. Yeah, I don't know if it's not working. Move carefully and fix things. And so I stick them everywhere because I'm like, I love that. As far as like semi-starstruck, I wouldn't say as far as policy specifically. I worked in Germany for a little while under Chancellor Merkel, who is their, first of all, fantastic female leader of a country and really de facto leader of Europe for quite a long time. But she used to get criticized all the time for making decisions too slowly or for not reacting emotionally enough when things happened. And she would always like hold her hands together and just very calmly deliver things that sometimes she would take weeks to come up with the proper statement. Maybe that's an exaggeration. But I think being known as somebody who's overly careful is one of the best criticisms you can get in the government. And she really isn't too worried about what people think of her. I think especially as a female, she said, the media is going to call me ugly. I'm going to lean into it. Here's my bowl cut. Just enjoy. And she, personally, I like not having a bowl cut. I wouldn't necessarily take that route, but she really leans into the fact that I am here to do absolutely what I think is the best policy decision, not what a certain political party says or what a specific stakeholder wants. She's very careful with her words, her decisions, and what she does for the people that she's serving. And I really, really think that's something to emulate.
Great. Well, we are running out of time. I'm going to ask one question to all three panelists before we end tonight. Sort of what is everyone on this call who wants to take that next step, whether it's starting a business and contracting with the government or getting involved in government, what is that next first step they should take?
So I touched on this a little earlier, depending on what route you want to go in. I'm a little biased. Throughout my 14 years in government, I've hopped in and out. So with almost evenly split, 6 and 7 sort of between contractor world and, in the government actual position proper. And I think that the best way is to serve as a contractor and, kind of test it out, because you're not really committed to a specific agency, because it is very difficult to get a footing in as an FTE, you got to go online, USA Jobs or that respective municipality's website and look at their careers, and understanding their pay schedules and things like that can get a little complex. And so that's why I sort of was taking that approach to, just figuring out what salaries you want, what skill sets you want to align yourself with, and the occupations. And then, putting yourself out there, whether it be resumes, cold calls, or emails, like Alexis said, and that's actually, worked for me as well. Once I submitted a resume in the past, I used to call them and be like, hey, I have a quick question, or I need to update this, and just to get them on the phone. I'm not sure if it works much anymore, but so putting yourself out there on LinkedIn, I think that's very, very important to have a social media presence. And as a contractor, attending some of these, I'm going to keep saying this, but attending some of these webinars that give you the sort of steps to marketing yourself, they will pretty much give you the blueprint. It can get a little confusing, so that's why it's good to reach out to mentors. There's, again, free mentors in SCORE. All the services that they offer is free except for the webinars. I think the webinar that I paid for was like $25 or $40. And again, they gave you like a 12-step how to enter into the federal government sort of workshop. That would be, pretty much my advice.
My advice would be to, one, do your research, know the schedules, know where you may want to fit, know what those, and then look up and see what those jobs look like, or those positions look like, and then get involved in different industry days, different professional groups, and then kind of going back to what Mimi said, then start reaching out to people to get a better grasp, because going into the government is, again, a completely different beast, but it's doable. And so as long as you know where you want to go, kind of what you're aiming for, and know what you qualify for, and then start making those connections, I mean, I think you are on the right track.
I definitely, I guess, would echo that. It's difficult to know what you want. And when you meet with somebody, a lot of times the first thing they want to know is like, who are you and what do you want? Which sounds really transactional. But if you're able to say, I am a junior in college, I major in this, and I want to do X, Y, Z, or I want to learn X, Y, Z, it is so much easier for people to help you. And I think especially when I talk to slightly, I don't want to say young people, slightly younger people, I'm always like, help me help you. What do you want? What can I get for you? And figuring that out, it doesn't have to be like, oh, this is my 50-year career plan. It's what is most helpful to you right now. And I think to Mimi's point about having a social media presence, be the person who does the 2-word thing. I do government technology. I do like interior design, whatever it is. Like, make sure that when people think of you, and that's what social media really is reiterating the same point a million times over. You want to be the person that they go, oh my gosh, I know somebody in government tech. They go, I know Alina. Maybe they don't, maybe they think of somebody else, whatever. But making sure that people know who you are and how they can help you is half the freaking battle with a lot of networking, and especially when you're early in your career. Never go into something, and this isn't get me a job, it's this is what I'm looking for, and somebody might carry you part of the way. But people can't help you if they don't know how, and making get those 2 sentences down pat. Who are you? What do you want? And smile a little bit.
Thank you all so much. You've been so generous with 90 minutes out of your evening this evening. I think we probably could do another 90 minutes. I know I could. But thank you all. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you all for joining us. And thank you to SCORE Youngstown for hosting us. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their evening and week. And please, as they said, reach out to us on social media. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.